Hello everyone, it's Dr. Wolfe here, and in this video, I'm going to be introducing the new skill of evaluating information. So this is in the same new bucket of critiquing that also holds obtaining information, summarizing text that we read, that we introduced recently. So let's dive in right away into what's evaluating information. So information, everything you consume, read, watch, is made by people. Flawed, biased, imperfect people. So we need to evaluate information to make sure that what we're reading is getting to the truth and is legit. All right. So what are the consequences if you just don't do this? If you don't do the thinking, someone else is going to do it for you. Not evaluating articles allows people to hijack your consciousness to think the things that they want you to think. All right. So digital information especially brings in a whole new set of problems that did not exist when even I was in high school. So we are swimming in this new and strange world, and we're going to be figuring it out together. But I'm going to show you guys some strategies to help out with this process. All right. If there was, this might be, not sure, it's up there with some like constructing explanations, planning, investigations. Out of all the skills that you could take from my class, all right, and execute after high school, it might be this one, because better information leads to better decisions, leads to a better world. Right? Your ability to think critically, all right, about the information you look at. So how do you evaluate information? Before I get into this, let's ground ourselves in what you might be working on today. So if you were to take a look at this packet that you have, right, the other day we read this article on just 11 minutes per exercise, per day of exercise. We summarized it. We're going to head to page 4. And on page 4, all right, if you were to click this QR code, I'm just going to go to the article right here. All right, well, I was there just a second ago. Here we go. Study 11 minutes a day, right here. That's the same article we read, right? This is just the actual website that it's from. All right, so we're going to evaluate this article, same one that we summarized the other day. All right, so if I go back here to my website, and by the way, I'm on my website. Check it out. We got a new scientific practice page evaluating information. So if you ever wanted more info on this, check out this page. All right, first thing about evaluating information. See this tab right here? This might drive you nuts to see all these tabs. You know, sometimes this could be a good thing, because when you are evaluating an article, I don't want you to just read vertically. I want you to be reading laterally. I want you to be looking at other sources, clicking on links, right, to assess if it's legit or not. Okay? So with that in mind, we'll look at some examples of that process of lateral reading. First thing we're going to do is we're going to determine if the source is relevant. It's as simple as this. When was the article or video published? All right. And then from there, like, okay, is it relevant? And some of that depends on the context, right? If we read an genetics article from about 2002, the field of genetics and DNA is changing all the time. It's probably going to be outdated. But if it's an article from 2022 on photosynthesis, not a lot of new research in that domain, it's probably relatively still relevant. Okay, so now let's look at this article. Let's try to find the relevancy. All right, you should be able to find when it was published pretty easily, and usually early on. Sometimes you'll see it at the very bottom, but it should be early on, and boom, right away, March 1st, 2023. All right, so I could go back here and I could say the article was published on March 1st, 2023. All you really need to do to start off is just write, what did you observe? I observed this is when it was published. So now, though, you have to kind of give your critical take on it. Do you think it's relevant? Well, that's only a few months ago. Right now it's October something, 2023. That's pretty relevant. Even if it was a genetics article, it'd be pretty relevant. I'm going to say it's very relevant. That's it. That's all you need to do. What do you notice? What's your assessment of the relevancy, the credibility, whatever you're specifically looking at? All right. So let's move on to credibility. So what's credibility? This is kind of the main meat, the most important part. Is the evidence, the claims, what you're reading, is it actually legit? So there's a couple things that we could look for here. All right. The first one is authority. What do I mean by that? Who is actually making this source, and are they credible? Right? We could look at two things: the author or the creator, or the publisher, like the organization behind it. Let's first focus on the author. All right. Does the author have credible expertise on the subject? So, for instance, an article written by a scientist is going to be have more authority than just some random blogger. Right? The author should be at the top or the bottom of the page. All right, you want to be looking at the author's job title, education, area of expertise, professional experience, things that tell you that, like, okay, it seems like they can talk about this subject. So let's do that for this article. Right away, by Arya Bendix. All right, we got the name of the author. So again, sometimes it'll be at the bottom. And there's a link. So great, I'm going to click on it. Arya Bendix. All right, Arya Bendix is the breaking health reporter for NBC News Digital. There's a picture. Latest from Arya Bendix. Wow, she writes pretty frequently. 3 days ago, 4 days ago, 5 days ago, 6 days ago. Right? Okay, so seems like she writes a lot. She's a health reporter, so she specializes in that. So I'm going to write that down. That's what I notice. All right, Arya Bendix is an author. She's breaking health reporter. Is the author. She's the breaking health reporter for NBC News. So, and where I assess this, well, I'm thinking she is a health reporter. Okay, but I don't really know like much more info about her. It doesn't give me like her credentials. So I'm going to say she may have credibility. Is that okay? Do you have to say it's credible or not credible? No. All right. At the end of the day, I've had students say that assess something and based on what they found, they say that it's credible, and another student looks at the same article, they find something else, and they say it's not credible. That's okay. Both of those can be true at once. I care about this the most. Are you critically thinking about what you're reading? All right? That's what I want to see evidence for. So when I look at this, speaking of critically thinking, I want to know more information. So what I'm going to do a little bit more lateral reading. I'm going to go to good old Google, and I'm going to type in Arya Bendix, all right, breaking health reporter, all right, NBC News. Looks like I was just there. LinkedIn. Let's try it out. So this is kind of like her professional page. All right. Confirmed she's the breaking health reporter. Some other places that she's worked at, The Atlantic. That's a pretty good, news source. Education, Harvard. Harvard University. Majored in English, minor in women's studies. The New School, I've never really heard about that, but it looks like she has a master in fine arts and creative writing. Okay, so that's kind of interesting, right? Arya Bendix went to Harvard and majored in English and has a master's in fine arts. You might look at that and be like, okay, she went to Harvard. She's pretty smart, but she also didn't really major in science, right? But maybe the major in English helped her be a better journalist, right? So notice that we're kind of juggling all these ideas at the same time. And we could say that it makes it credible, this makes it least credible, right? So she went to a good university. She may not have the scientific expertise or authority on the topic, right? So we're going to essentially say like there's some credibility to it, there's not some credibility to it. And that's okay to say, all right, as long as you defend why you're saying it. All right, so we've looked at the authority of the author, but now let's look at the authority of the publisher. All right. Does the publisher have a credible reputation? You may have heard of the organization before, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's credible, or, oh, that's not credible. You could Google the information if you don't know. And there's this really helpful source right here, the media bias chart that we're going to look at in a sec that can be really helpful to look at too. The publisher is usually the name of the website, and you could usually find more information just by clicking on it. So here, our website is NBC News. I'm going to go back to the main article. Didn't really need to do that. I could just click here. NBC News, and it looks like this is just like a general news type of source. It's commenting on things that are happening today, right? So, all right, but I don't know if it's credible or not. I want to know more information, so I'm going to head back here and click on the media bias chart, all right? So when I click on the media bias chart, actually, I'll stay here. Notice you have on the x-axis, political bias. On the right and the left, if you're not sure what that is, we'll talk about it later. Right now, for today, I want you to focus on this y-axis. The higher up we are, the more reliable the article is, and the lower down, the less reliable or the less credible not the article, but the publisher themselves, like their reputation is. So I'm going to type in NBC News here. It takes a while for it to load, so fortunately I have it up right here, and it gives me this. Here are all these little data points of specific articles that the people of this website assessed, the reliability on and everything. And overall, the average is right here, which if we go over to the left, it's in this green zone of more reliable. All right, so that's good. I'm going to head back here, and I'm going to write, NBC News is the publisher, and all fonts media search found that the source to be overall more reliable. So this contributes to the credibility of the article. It makes it more credible. That's my assessment of it. Awesome. All right. So now let's look at evidence. All right. Does the author reference studies, links? All right. I'm going to even go down here on our website. All right. So are the claims supported by evidence and facts? All right. If they're not, you got to be really skeptical about the source. All right. Did you guys know that 80% of statistics are made up on the spot? I don't know. I literally just made that up on the spot. So we need to see, just kind of use our brains. Like, does this make sense? Like the argument the person's making, not even looking at sources, just like, does it make logical sense to you? All right. But then you also, I'm not an expert on everything. So I need to like make sure, like if I'm reading something I'm not an expert on, do I see some sources that could like help establish that this seems credible? All right. I can fact check it. That's where we're going to do more lateral reading. So I'm going to go back to the article and all right, here's the article. Just 11 minutes. By the way, notice we haven't even read the article yet. We're just kind of looking around at this point, right? All right, so as I read the article, just 11 minutes of moderate physical activity, according to an analysis published Tuesday, and it's a link, so I'm going to click on it. All right. And it says non-occupational physical activity and risk of cardiovascular disease, cancer, or mortality outcomes. A dose-response meta-analysis of... Okay, so you don't need to know everything about that, but it looks like, yeah, this is the actual study that they referenced. I could like look a little bit more into it. But this is what like a scientific paper is. You have like the authors here. If I were to like go down, it talks about like the method. So like this is a legit scientific paper. So they're not just making this up. There was a paper about this, it looks like. As I keep on scrolling, researchers estimated 1 in 10 premature deaths defined by the World Health Organization. So when I click on this link, does it take me to the World Health Organization? Yes. Not only that, I don't want it to just take me to just a homepage. It's like, cool. Like, what were they talking about here? 1 in 10 premature deaths as defined by the World Health Organization. All right, this is how premature mortality from non-communicable disease. That seems like they're defining it here, right? So that's good. If I keep on going, looks like there's other sources where when I click on the research, it'll actually take me to the actual paper and findings and even like highlighted here. So that's good. All right, so I'm going to head back here. And for my evidence, I'm going to say the author links the actual study she is discussing for evidence and includes many other direct and specific links. Like it just doesn't take me to the WHO website. It takes me to the specific page of the WHO website on the stuff that she's talking about. So this contributes to the credibility of the article. All right. Now, let's say that I want to do more, or maybe there wasn't a ton of links. All right. I could also laterally read for evidence. I could go to good old Google again. And by the way, check out all these tabs we've made already. And I could type in 11-minute exercise study, right? And all right, let's just see what we see on Google. All right, 11 minutes of exercise each day may reduce risk. 11 minutes of aerobic lowers disease risk, study says. It was published same date as this study was, so it seems like they're talking about the same thing. That one was from CNN, Washington Post, University of Cambridge, New York Times. So these, from what I know, I've heard of these. Well, I actually know a decent amount about these different universities and websites, but maybe you've also heard about these too and been like, okay, these seem like some credible news outlets and everything, and they seem to be talking about similar things. So I'm going to head back here and many other sites, many of them credible news sources like the New York Times and the Washington Post have written about a similar study and said similar things about it. So this contributes to the credibility of the article. All right. So notice that was most of the stuff right there. But let's go to the last, and this is really important too, the bias. All right. So for the bias, I'll give you this meter, all right, and I'll say pro finding, or I'll give you, say, if it's neutral, and then is it pro the concept that they're talking about, anti the concept they're talking about, right, specific to the article. So I'm going to jump here back to my page where it says, describe the bias. And bias is conscious or unconscious influence of a study and its results. All right. Again, conscious means that they knowingly are kind of saying or wording things, or maybe highlighting certain evidence to highlight or influence their point more. Sometimes people have that bias and they don't even realize that they're doing it, right? They're not even conscious of it. All right. So we could look at the bias of the author and we could look at the bias of the publisher, but we're not going to do that today. We're just going to focus on the author today. All right. For the author, all right, it can be tricky. So what we need to do is we just need to kind of overall assess some things to look for. Are they being really opinionated, one-sided? Do they only give one side or both sides? Are they giving facts, or are they also giving their viewpoint? Does it have a